Right, welcome back to another episode of Into the Valley, where today we will be looking back on not a pretty game, but the most essential of it all, 3 points, with Charlton's 1-0 victory against Sheffield United at the Valley. Oh, initial thoughts?
Yeah, a really, really weird one, actually. I think,
One of the more bizarre games we've had of recent times, really.
well, arguably one of our poorest performances, if not the poorest performance of the season, yet we come away with 3 points. And I think that's the strange thing about it, is you go away from the game, although you've taken all 3 points, and which is all that matters, like you said, pretty much, like you go away feeling a little bit concerned for the next few games if things don't change a little bit, because ultimately the reason we won that game was because of the decisions that their players made, and obviously swung the game massively in our favour.
Can you though also at the same time see that both ways in regards to, yes, there is some concerns regarding the performances, and a lot of the concerns, to be fair, are very much circled around a lot of the stuff that we talk about quite often.
Yeah.
But we've seen in several occasions a game like that, which is Southampton, who absolutely tanked us. Stoke, who did very similar, and actually to come away from that with 3 points. That, to be honest, the ref helped us in regards to the situation of them being down to 9 men, but and I'm not sure the game would be the same if it was 11 versus 11. But do you sometimes, especially in a 46-game season, say, do you know what, we're going to have fortunate, unfortunate moments, but still the most important thing, and that was my feeling going in at half-time. My only thought was, this has now become a must-win 3 points, and it's just, at the end of the season, the table doesn't say,
No.
do you remember that time you dominated for half an hour, there was a few kind of decisions, and that's why you got the 3 points. It doesn't. It adds the 3 points, and hopefully 3 points closer to safety. So
100%. And also, we're playing a team that are in and around us, so it's not as if we're like, you would argue that Sheffield United's squad is easily a top six squad. I think when we did our predictions for the beginning of the season, they were right up there for us. I mean, one of us might have even had them in the top 2.
Well, I think at the beginning of the season we had the Ipswich, Southampton, and Sheffield United, and you could have rotated them round in any direction.
And ultimately, like, their squad is where they should be, and I still stand by that. I think that they have enough players and enough quality in that team to be way, way higher than they are. And we know what happened at the start of the season. Obviously, Sellers just getting it drastically wrong, but even today, like going into that game, I think Sheffield United were one of the form teams in the league. I'm pretty sure
I think won 7 of the last 10.
they're on like a great run, and they've beaten some really good sides in that run as well. So we knew like them coming to the Valley was always going to be a really, really tough test. And actually, probably if we're all honest, we were probably expecting the worst today. So to come away with the 3 points, and exactly as you said, it's like that old adage from golf. It's like the scorecard doesn't show pictures, and it doesn't. It's the same thing. It's like, yeah, we might have been off it today. I think the concern from the fans, and maybe the reaction from some of the fans today, was a sort of the fact that they were down to 9 men, and we still didn't look like we were massively penetrating them at the back. And I think that looks to be a bit of an issue still in terms of creativity and the amount of sort of chances we're creating, especially when you're going to have so much more space and time in that scenario.
And I think I do understand that being a cause of frustration, but for me to get really angry, and don't get me wrong, I watch Charlton sometimes and I am frustrated, but for it to get to the point where it boils over, for me, it comes down to something quite straightforward. If we were 10 points adrift sitting in the relegation zone, I can look at that and say it's an absolutely crippling problem.
Yeah.
Well, it is an issue within our squad, and it's something we've got to work on, and I don't think it's an overnight fix, and I think personnel is a big part of that.
Yeah.
But the realistic side of it is we are sitting quite in a first season back in the Championship. When you actually look at it, we're like one win off going into like what most people would deem mid-table.
Yeah.
And I look at that and think, is it a crippling problem? Well, no, because if it was a crippling problem, we'd be comfortably within that relegation zone. And at that point, 100% you can lose your mind about it. But I just don't understand the pandemonium around it, albeit it's frustrating and something that we do have to sort. But throughout a 46-game season, do I think how we play and what we do will just about be enough to keep us up? Yeah, I do. And I think hopefully that is with not sitting comfortably within mid-table, but I hope going into the last few games of the season, it's not a conversation we're having where we're worried. I still feel confident on that.
And exactly what you just said is bang on, to be fair. But also, I would say we've spoken about it for quite some time now. It's more of a personnel, what we have at our disposal issue rather than a tactical one. I think Jones wants to implement a certain way of playing, but he just does not have the tools there to do it as it stands. And I think he's trying to put a system in place where we're effective for the type of players we have available. Now, that doesn't mean to say in the future that we won't reach that stage and we'll get more fluid, which I know he talks about a lot.
Well, and we have seen, and as much as it has been real glimpses, we have had little conversations throughout the season where we've gone that, and it's more passage of plays than full 90 minutes or full halves. We have had signs of performances where we go, do you know what? I can actually see where that maybe does click into place. So I do think there's still an optimism to see us getting there, but yeah, I find it.
Well, we were coming up against a team that had a much higher quality and caliber of player in pretty much every position. So you're already on the back foot in that regard. Then it comes down to, right, have you got the fight, the desire to actually push on, especially at home? And ultimately, we showed we did. Like, yes, we really did struggle, and maybe this is a good time to go into the game. We struggled big time in that first 30 minutes of the game, and I think they were just piling on the pressure, and we did so well to hang on as long as we did.
Yeah, 100%. I think actually, before we go into the start of the game, the one thing I do want to go into, because it will come as part of the kind of starting lineup coming up, etc., but an exciting week in regards to, we had the conversation after the Chelsea game that we expected that some heads were going to be through the door by that point, but in the follow-up to this week, we have now seen that. So we've seen the addition. Let's start on the first one, and that's Harry Clark. Obviously a right-sided, seems like can drop into potentially that right-sided centre-back, but predominantly as a right-back.
Yeah.
Looked online, seems to be from Ipswich fans that I don't think he's ever quite kind of clicked there. I think he was in their League One squad.
He had promotion with them.
Yeah, but I think since they've had that step up, been kind of an outsider. Was on loan at Sheffield United last season.
Yeah.
And I think the kind of player he is, when I saw the description was he puts his heart on the line, he's a very passionate player, and I thought, okay, that's Nathan Jones all over. Also, I thought quite a fun fact that I saw from one of his interviews is he used to, I don't think in any professional sense, but he used to play striker. So he said he's got that kind of slightly more attacking brain that maybe some defenders don't have.
He's alone, so at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out how we expect it to, it's not the end of the world. Like, he's plugging a hole at the moment. I think we've got so many injuries at the back that he's just brought in as a body, but he's there with some qualities. Like you said, he's played at a decent level. He's played for Ipswich, obviously, who are a very good side now. And he was on loan at Sheffield. So again, he's played in some good teams.
Well, the fact that Ipswich haven't just directly moved him on as of yet in those years where maybe they weren't playing him tells you that there clearly is a player in there of some quality. Whether he'll ever be of that standard for them, maybe
who knows?
not. But yeah,
exactly. You mentioned it last week when we were talking about the rumours of him coming in.
Well,
just because he's not good enough for Ipswich, like. We're Charlton.
If Sheffield United took him on loan last year, that clearly says that they saw him
Sheffield United were up there last year.
So I think that's a really, really good addition.
Yeah.
I like seeing the fact we dropped into the loan market. I think it's bringing in some experience of just that quality that I think we're begging for.
Gives us some heads at the back.
Yeah, it gives us some heads at the back. The utility of potentially covering that centre-back role if needed is brilliant. So, yeah, no, I think a really good addition and excited to see what he can kind of bring for the season.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
The next one, I think we can have a conversation in a similar vein, but maybe the experience side of it much more. One we've been rumoured with. He's been handed the 99 shirt.
Yeah. Bold.
Very bold. And that is Lyndon Dykes.
Yeah.
I think a very, very good signing, and not in regards to, I know some people jump on the bandwagon straight away of look at his stats, look at his goal scoring, but I think, do you know what? That's not, well, it is what our squad needs. We do need that goal scoring kind of nous, but there is other positions that if we can sort some stuff out where that can come from. We've got Sonny Carey, we've got Kelman. Hopefully, if we can get maybe
Matty Godden.
Yeah, Matty Godden coming back. There's goals around, but I think what we are desperately is a player who can give some competition to Leeburn, who has been performing well recently, but I don't think we can be as relying on every week in, week out. We know historically he's been ebbing and flowing, but someone who just oozes championship experience as well. And that, for me, is a real key thing. And sometimes just that, even around the training ground, everything all in, it's where even we discussed about someone like the influence like a Luke Berry had on the squad last season. I see that in a similar vein, and that experienced head that I think our squad is really screaming out for.
Definitely, and I think as well, like you said, he's got experience. He was at QPR for quite a while, so again, he's played a lot of Championship games. He was obviously at Birmingham, and he's got that sort of slight aura about him. He's got a bit of a presence, hasn't he? And I think that's another thing that will really be good for us, because he's got not only the experience, but he's got that stature, and he's kind of got that bully boy sort of going to throw himself about, ruffle a few feathers. And also, we always say, we look at how the team that got rid of him's fans react, and they were all like, they really rated him. They liked him a lot, the Birmingham fans, and I think it's because he's one of those players that gives his everything. And again, like he's obviously got some quality in there as well to get goals, and he scored, I think, a few important goals for Brum.
He had a few that he had a really last minute goal, I think, that won him the game. And absolute limbs in the far end. Lyndon Dykes. But once again, are we seeing those kind of players who come in who are really passionate, really kind of becoming fan favourites? And we've discussed it with other players like Tanto when he signed, for example. Yes, there's some question marks around certain things, but you can see there is a character of player. And I've seen, even with Harry Clark, I've seen like a lot of videos where he's very, very passionate, getting involved with the fans. And they're all the kind of characters that you can just see in a Nathan Jones side. The one thing he wants is he knows we're not there on 100% quality, but the passion and the kind of...
There's a mould of player that Jones tends to go for, and he tends to go for players that have got their head screwed on, that he knows are going to give everything for the side. And I think Dykes really does fit that mould of someone that we really could do with at the top of the pitch. Because again, like we've got younger players like Leeburn in there who could really learn a thing or two from a player like Dykes who's got a lot of experience. I think he's a really good side.
I think that could as well, for the development of Leeburn and some of the things we talk about. I think he could be brilliant for that.
And also, I saw, I'd forgotten, but he was actually in the same squad as Kelman, I think, when he was at QPR. So there's a little link there, which is quite nice. And you might see a little partnership developing there over time. Fingers crossed.
Well, and also the big one is the fact he wants to go to the World Cup in the summer. And I think that fight and drive for any player, especially looking at realistically this probably being his only opportunity that he's probably going to have.
Well, he's in his early 30s now.
Yeah, he's 30 or 31, I think he is. So it's his last opportunity realistically. Or most likely to have that opportunity. So he's going to want to be putting his everything in, and that's exactly what we need at the moment. We need, as much as we need quality in certain areas, we need fight, and that's how you a lot of the time scrap your way through seasons. It's not always the most technically gifted team that win.
100%. So, I'm really pleased with that signing, and I think he will fit in nicely. Actually, we've done well there.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think the first two through the door, and hopefully a few more to come, because I think Jones has definitely alluded to more, and I think there's definitely...
There will be.
And the biggest one, without a doubt, is that left wing back role. I think every fan is just...
You know what? I was thinking, actually, because obviously we haven't got that position in yet, and I hoped that we might before today's game, actually, but I think they're really trying to get it right with that one, and I think they're probably... I can't imagine that's the most straightforward of positions to recruit.
I think it's a difficult one as well, because I can imagine... in regards to the management as well, is they see that number one spot being Josh Edwards.
Yeah.
And I think they will see a world where, yes, you want competition, but it's like, well, how far do you go with that position? Because I think they do see when Josh Edwards
will be
fits in. He is like the perfect one for that. And we've seen over and over and how well he started at the beginning of the season. And I assume...
he will be back.
I assume he will be back relatively soon. He's been out since September, I think. So, it'd be interesting to see. Sure. But let's go back then. That's the transfer talk kind of out of the way. And let's go back into that first half. So, as soon as the game started, I felt nervous. They were quick on the ball. They were on top. They were playing. What I thought is it was the kind of team we've struggled against time and time again this season. Technically very good on the ball.
Yeah.
They were playing through the midfield. Our midfield were relatively non-existent. Absolutely dominant, and carved us open in those first kind of opening 20 minutes, half hour, several times. I think if it wasn't for one man between the sticks, we would have been potentially at least a goal down, and probably should have been more.
Yeah, 100%. I think they carved us open. Like you said, the teams that we've really, really struggled against, your Southamptons, the teams that have that real quality players in the middle of the park who can just play the ball around. We saw it instantly that we were getting overrun in the middle. And then what that was doing was leaving them little gaps to just thread little through balls through. They had, I think it was Tom Cannon was in pretty early on, 1-on-1 essentially, and a bloody brilliant save from Kaminsky.
Bamford just before that as well. I think
Bamford had one that was a great.
Roy Anderson slipped kind of on the ball trying to get back up. Great save.
They had the penalty claim. I don't think.
What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it wasn't a pen for me. Like, he went down too softly. I think when you go down from contact from behind, for example, like a bit of a nudge, it has to be a really sort of firm nudge to really put you on your arse.
Yeah, and I think if it wasn't for the fact, so my instant feeling on it was no pen, and the main reason for it is I thought there was such an easy opportunity for him to actually take his shot and probably score.
Yeah.
And for me, he slowed down and obviously kind of looked to try and buy it. And for me, I think that is why the ref didn't give it, is the obvious nature of what he was going for. Even if it was a pen, if that was full speed and he hadn't done the slowdown, I think I could see the argument more. But that little moment where he slowed down, and one thing I will say about Bamford, kind of throughout that whole game, I think he's a classy operator. You can tell he's played at higher levels over recent years.
He did play.
He's had a lot of games in kind of Premier League, or whether it's kind of high level Championship. He's a quite clever footballer.
He is.
He's a frustrating one when you're in the other fan, because he is also. And I think if it was your own player, you'd love it because it's the dark arts. But he's quite a whiner, very much on that side of things.
Yeah,
and he can be a frustrating watch. I remember, I think it was even going into the second half, someone ran their arm, brushed them alongside, and he held his face.
But he's got previous. He got banned from the playoffs when he was at Leeds because he feigned like some sort of dive. I think he, like you said, he tries to buy
like that.
I was just about to say that. I think some referees will have seen how he does conduct himself and maybe actually put that in the back of their mind.
Who cried wolf, and I think we sometimes see that.
Yeah.
I know he maybe isn't as high caliber, but I do think we sometimes see that with someone like Leeburn.
Yeah, he does.
He has a very similar. I think he went down like he'd been shot at one point in the first or second half, and I do think sometimes there is a bit of a reputation that follows a player, that even when there is maybe a genuine claim, because of historically what you look to do and deceive the ref, you kind of create a rod for your own back, and I think that's very easily missed off sometimes when you look at the bigger picture.
It could have been a factor. I just don't think it was a penalty either, though. I think the referee saw it pretty clearly as well. He was quite close to it, and I think there just wasn't enough contact. So for me, I know Wilder was harping on about it after the game.
I think he was trying to claim it was clever centre forward play. To me, it's the opposite. If you've got a shot on goal that was a very, very good chance, it's not clever centre forward play to then try and win the pen.
It's almost the opposite, because you've got like you said, he had the opportunity to really get a good shot on goal. So it is what it is. But I mean, referees ultimately come to the decision that it wasn't a pen, and I think it was the correct one.
Yep, no, definitely. So at that point, it was all looking quite doom and gloom. And as much as, look, the one thing I will say, and I think it was on the comms as well, for everything we're saying there, it was still 0-0.
Yeah.
That's a positive.
That was what I took from that, actually. That we were like really under the cosh, but we still keep.
But it felt like, and there's been a few games this season where it felt like it didn't feel like a game where we weren't really putting anything together. We were pumping it long. They were getting the ball back. It was attack versus defence, and I think it didn't feel like the kind of game where our game plan was kind of paying off. It felt like one of those where it was a matter of time. But that all changes in the 35th minute. Djibril Soumaré.
I think that was about as straight a red as you could ever get, in my opinion.
I think so. But one thing I will say to him is I don't think there was any malice in what he was going for.
No.
But there is zero question, and at the same time, I will be very interested to see what kind of the outcome is and the extent, because the problem is the quality of what you watch isn't Prem, where it's kind of zooming in with all the slow-mos. For me, there's certain angles where it looks like borderline, like leg snap.
I'm not sure I want to see it.
No, but you know, like how you can tell when it's that really bad leg snap. And I don't know if it's just one of those impacts where it kind of like, it looked like it bent. And
well, there was some footage of Nibs at the end of the game in a boot, and he was walking.
That's
he obviously
positive.
didn't have weight on it. So, but if you've broken your leg, you're off to hospital straight away. So
So hopefully, that
yeah,
might
I
be.
think it's hopefully not as bad as it looked. But at the same time, anytime, and it's a funny one because Samare, obviously, he took a bad touch. And what tends to happen is when you take a bad touch, he's then trying to recover the ball. And he's obviously mistimed it, and he has planted his foot right.
His
onto the
studs
base of
down
his leg.
planted onto the base, the bottom of his leg,
Yeah.
and there's no question.
It is a red.
It's a red card. I think when you look at it to the counter, and I think the counter is very interesting, and anyone I'd advise to go and watch. There's about a 12-minute interview with Wilder, and I think he comes out with some quite heat at the moment, quite bizarre stuff. Some stuff that maybe I can understand.
He was rattled by the ref.
Yeah, he was absolutely heads gone. And I find the interesting one is he compared that one to a similar, and I think it was involving Harvey Nibs.
It was, yeah.
For me, they're vastly different kind of.
It was on McCullum, their left back.
situations,
I
yeah.
think he was like clearing the ball down the line.
And yes, the studs are. So I think the foot and the studs are a little bit more up, but he hasn't. I think for it to be a red card in that situation, you have to then plant that in.
It's the force that you use.
Was their defender kicked through in that
Yeah,
moment?
yeah,
And it hit the bottom of his boot. I would argue, yeah, maybe you could look at that, and I can see an argument for saying a yellow card given. You probably wouldn't argue it too much the other way. But
Yeah.
that, for me, those two situations are not comparable.
But if you said about people go and watch it, no, I advise do go and watch it because it's quite funny actually. But he keeps banging on about the stitches the boy had to have in the top of his foot, but that happens weekly.
But you can clash heads and split your whole head over.
yeah,
That
yeah.
doesn't mean it's a red card.
No,
I don't.
no,
It's a
exactly.
bizarre one to say that for me that the Harvey Nibs one isn't because of necessarily how even bad it looked, which was horrific.
Yeah.
But he's planted his full weight into.
It's a reckless challenge that didn't have any malice behind it, but
Mhm.
it could have broken his leg. Genuinely, that was pretty horrendous. So yeah, they're down to 10, and then all of a sudden you think, okay, that could swing this.
And I don't think it particularly did at first. I felt
No.
they were. The problem I felt with that is even with them down to 10 men, they could probably take off an attacker, play the same defensive midfield, and the realistic side on that is they'd probably still dominate the game.
For a while, they didn't make a change.
Yeah.
So they were
No,
able to
that-
have
no,
a man sent off
and
in
I-
the middle and still play.
I kind
the
of
way
don't
they
blame
were.
them, and I think they were still the team on top.
Mm.
That carries on. It obviously levels out a little bit, but then 45 plus 2, Tanganga.
This one's not as clear cut in any way, shape, or form. I don't think. I don't know what your thoughts are on it.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I've
so-
watched it over and over and over. My feeling is I think it's a very harsh red card. I think he goes through the back, but for me, there doesn't seem an obvious elbow. His arm is out.
sort of side on like that.
Yeah, his arm is kind of out in a bit of a silly position.
Yeah. Do you know what? I've seen some stuff online. Actually, I remember back now when Samare got sent off. Tangana's their captain, so he was allowed to go and speak to the referee afterwards, and he was pretty forceful with it, and he was borderline getting up in the ref's face because I think he massively was at the time for some reason just disputing the red card, and I think there. And again, I've seen it in Wilder's interview, and I think he almost sort of makes the claim that Tangana's reaction to the referee had an influence on the ref almost wanting to sort of get him.
But I think you can look at that both ways because I think you could also look at it, and I think the way Wilder's trying to paint it is that the ref was kind of pissed off at the way he
Tangana.
had spoken to him or how he had kind of reacted to that situation. I think there's another argument you could look at it, which is from the ref's point of view. He looks at it as, well, his head's gone a little bit, and then he's gone into that 10 minutes later.
That's true, actually.
And maybe he's gone in with more malice than what he had. I'm not saying that makes it right, because I do think it is. I can kind of still see a world where he does give it. But my instant one when he pulled out the red that quickly was, I'm not sure on that.
Yeah.
And the more I've watched it back, I still do think it is. He's given him a decision to make, and I think it probably is influenced by the fact he thinks he's gone in like quite angrily. More on that side. I think it's harsh.
I think it's people say an orange card. It's in between that yellow and red. Like it's like very clumsy, and because it's involving the back of someone's head and you're going straight through them. Like Kerry obviously got flattened out by it. It wasn't a great one, but I think yellow card. No one argues about it either side. I think you accept it. Tangana accepts it. It was clumsy. We accept it because it wasn't great, but it's probably not a red. So I would say it was harsh.
I think it was harsh. The only other thing I will say is it reminds me similar of the penalty we got. I think it was against Blackburn with Lloyd Jones. The only comment I will say is the clumsiness in going in the way he did gave the ref a decision.
Yeah.
So there's an argument to say if you don't give the ref a decision, you're not in that position. Easier said than done, but no, definitely on the harsh side. But that seemed like, my God, a game that has been so pretty poor.
We've been handed a
We've
gift
looked, as much as I know we talk about how technically the players have got on the pitch, but they were a level below even their own ability, and we've been handed an absolute golden ticket here. The unknown is, how do we then go about the game? You've got them making subs left, right and centre, trying to plug whatever might look like, and we've gone maybe the more attacking. We've seen TC obviously at half-time come on, Lyndon Dykes coming on for Kelman.
Carey came on with
Nibs, obviously. So we've now got quite an attacking outfit. And look, no matter how good of a team you are, 9 versus 11, there is space on the pitch. The biggest thing you'll see is you've got 9 men trying to cover the distance. A lot of possession from our side, and they are naturally going to tire. The strange thing is, it didn't come from their tiredness that we scored. We scored straight away, and it was a very Charlton goal.
It was. Well worked, to be fair.
And I think Nathan Jones hit the nail on the head. It's what we practice week in, week out. Sensational header from Dykes. I don't know how much he knew, but it looked like he just kind of
flicked it almost back.
Yeah, but just knowing to get it into the... And this is what we said about the flick on with purpose, putting it in the right area. Caught that. Lovely strike.
Great strike. I mean, we've seen so many times this season Carey just hitting a sweet strike, and he gets so much power behind the ball. As soon as he gets one on target, it's very difficult for the goalkeeper to save. He was never saving that. But like you said, actually, I think it was on the half volley. Brilliant finish, and we're used to seeing that from Carey. And actually, I said to you, I think during the game when Nibs came off, I was like, "I'll get Carey on it." Like this is the sort of player we're so badly struggling to break the lines and get the pitch. Get the ball up the pitch. He was the perfect man to sort of come on, and obviously he ended up breaking deadlock.
Do you think he's carrying a bit of an injury, or just fitness bits, where it's just a bit of break?
I don't really know what it is, whether he's just Jones is just rotating it out a little bit.
Clearly it's a bit of that, because I thought noticeably today personally, and we don't have a chance to speak about this often, but I thought we missed hugely Coventry.
Yeah.
And I think it's only until you see him out of the team you realise how much dirty work he does.
Well, essentially Anderson was like taking up that role. And I think, and Costello, to be fair, but I think that really then you start noticing the quality differences in that middle of the park.
When you could see, and I think we can talk about that, one thing we probably missed out the first half, there were players getting really frustrated, and there was one moment where Rankin Costello had a moment just to pass it to a player to the left from like a bit of a clearance, and it would have been a bit of a breakaway, and he absolutely just levered it. And it was almost like he was letting his frustration out. He was like he was just kicking out to get it out.
Some of the passing in that first half was abysmal. And I think as well had the negativity of the passing. There was no forward thinking at all in that first half. And I think when we come into that second half against 9 men, and we especially getting that goal early, like
it's very similar to how we said the Chelsea goal against the FA Cup, it just knocked the steam out of us. I felt that kind of did the same to Sheffield United, because I felt at 0-0 they could play still a pretty nasty game. They can still drop deep, and you still got to score a goal against 9 men.
Well, they're essentially putting 2 banks behind the ball, so
they're
still making
it's still attack versus defence, but it'd be difficult. As soon as you've got that, they now have to look at a game where they now have to push up. They have to attack us every so often to try and get something, and that will open up a lot of space.
I think when I was watching the game, and obviously when we got that first goal, I was like, okay, this really gives us that opportunity to just push on, get a couple more, make it comfortable, and obviously that didn't happen. And again, I think that's probably where the fan frustration then comes. And I've seen people saying that there was some unrest in the fan base, like in terms of at the game, there was some booing going on because they were just so frustrated that we were having that space to run into, that sort of opportunity to really like get triangle, put nice passes around their team. I mean, ultimately it's a training game at that point.
But I feel like after the goal, we did do a little bit of that. When TC was running down the left and
he was getting some runs.
Yeah. I feel like what happened is it felt like that was our only idea. And they quite quickly got onto it, started doubling up on TC, and then it was just going sideways. And the only other person, really, who was creating any kind of threat and looked like he was going to push forward was Harry Clark on the other side. And I thought he did a good job, albeit I thought the people around him weren't really showing him much. And I think you saw a brilliant moment of that when he played. Look, we've got a lot of space. They're trying to cover maybe 2 or 3 players at once.
Yeah.
And Harry Clark played it into, I want to say Roy Anderson, but it might have been Rankin Costello, I'm not sure.
One in the middle.
And instantly ran forward to run in behind their defenders. and we just played the ball back. And that movement, and you can see I think you can sometimes see from players who maybe come from teams that aren't set up in the way we are, how they do maybe look at games differently. And I think I can see where the frustration would come on that. And I think even players like Rankin Costello, when he lost his kind of cool at certain bits, I think there was a frustration from certain players who maybe wanted to play a bit more like that. But I think there were just, it was a bizarrely...
From watching Jones's post-match interview, he essentially is making the point that we are probably light in the middle of the part with creativity, and I think that's something we've addressed many times, especially in the last probably couple of months. Is that we've been more aware of it when we come up against good sides, and I think again today was just another glaring instance of us really, really struggling to just create that space, create that pass forward, and again, too many sideways, backwards passes. We're playing against 9 men, and we're still pinging it about the back, and we're not really looking forward.
And I think that's what it is, and I think that's where the balancing act is on it, because I don't think as much as I think we're a level below when you come to teams like Sheffield United, etc. When you have got that advantage, we have still got players in there, and what they were doing today was being sheep.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, and I think that's where it frustrates the fans. I thought it was interesting with Jones, because when I listened to his post-match, it was the most emotional and rattled that I've heard him, probably since the days where there was the questioning around his tenure coming into that like December time. And do you remember when he was kind of saying, if I'm not good enough, you don't have to have me.
Yeah.
It reminded me of those interviews.
A little bit of a toys out of the pram stuff.
Yeah.
I think as well, though, I do understand where it comes from sometimes, because I think certain fans really do. They expect to see us playing sort of. It's a bit harsh to say seeing us play like Brazil, because I don't think anyone expects us to be pinging it about left, right, and centre. But what we do expect to a degree is some creativity, to see some like little sparks, and we see it in certain games. We see it, but too often we don't. And I think today was a good example because of the 9 men situation. Still not seeing it. That's where the frustration grew from the crowd. But then again, if you spin it in the way that Jones has, we've beaten Sheffield United twice this season, and they're a team that were tipped to be right up there. We spoke about it at the beginning, and quality-wise, they're a bloody good side. So we've got 3 points. Yet I think that's where he's coming from. Is we've gone away with 3 points, and the fans still aren't happy. It's like, what more can I do? We're getting points against teams that we're not expected to, and the fans still aren't happy. And I think that's probably where his grievance was.
And I do kind of get that, and I do think it's look. I think those kind of criticisms, especially towards performance, can come when you're maybe 3 years consolidating the Championship and you're getting it over and over again, season and season again. But Jones did hit the nail on the head, which is, realistically, not long ago we were talking about how frustrated we were at a loss to Northampton or Burton or Accrington Stanley or bloody all of the kind of teams we were. And now we're having conversations where we're frustrated at the fact we're not playing fluid football against Sheffield United. And yes, look, the situations today, I think every fan would say, I'd love to see a little bit more fluidity in there. I'd love to see a bit more attacking. But would I rather see a free-flowing attacking Charlton team who go back down to League One, but it was exciting while we saw it? Yeah. Or would I rather see a really consolidated, look, sometimes boring, sometimes look creatively inept and stuff, and is quite functional, but if that means that's what we do to stay in the league and we build on that in years to come, I'll take that every day of the week. And I think that's where just that realisation, I think sometimes maybe the way this season has gone as well, and we've discussed it, where we were the kind of dizzy heights at the beginning of the season, I think set an expectation maybe in some fans that we're maybe above where we actually are, and actually this season is all about just staying up.
I do also think, like, booing the players, if that is what happened, you can really pick it up on the TV, to be fair, but if I've heard that's what happened, I think that is strong, considering we've gone away with 3 points against Sheffield United. Like, no matter what the circumstances are, that is a great 3 points. And at the end of the day, we are a team in transition. We talk about this week in, week out on here as well. We're a team in transition, and ultimately we said as well, like, we probably got a League One, high level League One squad still.
But is anyone realistically as well? Surely the coming away from any game 3 point that 3
Yeah.
points has just got to be it. If you,
It doesn't matter.
I don't care what the game is.
Doesn't
It can be ugly. It can be but if you come away 3 points, I just don't get the being. I can understand picking it apart after and saying, okay, I'm still a little bit concerned about this or that or whatever. But this season is just.
But
about how many
also,
points can we get on the board?
How many times have we this season had sort of like a really bad performance, but then we've then backed it up with actually a really positive performance. So who's to say we don't go to the Valley on Tuesday against Derby and play really well, and all of a sudden he tweaks it again a little bit, and there's a bit more nous in the middle of the pitch, and we actually look really good, and we could end up looking really exciting again. So
we would just bring a couple more players that unlock that key towards things. It's
So we have to really put stuff into perspective and not get too down about it, albeit sometimes I do understand the concern, because it's like, okay, well, we've still got quite a few games to go, and if we really are struggling against 9-man Sheffield United, how are we going to be against a full strength better side? And ultimately that's maybe where it comes from, but I think we've just got to be grateful that we come away with the 3 points in the end.
Yeah. I still think, as I say, that style of play will still pick up enough points.
We will. I think we'll be fine.
Well, the rest of that game, realistically, there wasn't really too much to it. I think they had one counter that I did get a little bit nervous. And they picked up the ball from us being like a corner, and they attacked with quite a lot of numbers, but nothing.
Generally, it was us sort of keeping the ball, breaking them down occasionally.
And I have to admit, I think it must have hit about the 85th minute. I felt quite sorry for them. I think it was after that attack. I think Hamer had gone on like a run, and they had all been running around so much they couldn't even press.
Well, no, he'd like busted a gut, and half their team had busted a gut to get out of the pitch. I think he just drilled it into Kaminski's hands, and then they're having to run back. And
I think that was kind of like their last chance. It was like the last bit of energy, and after that, kind of played round. Nothing really was going to happen. Fizzled out, and that's the end of the game. So let's go into then from there the individual performances. I thought it was quite an interesting one when it comes to that. As I say, I feel there was a lot of sheep in that squad today. I think there's a lot of people who,
few hiding. I think
a few hiding, and I think few not just kind of stepping up and taking the game by the scruff of the neck. I think there definitely was some positives to take, and I think let's start with the positives. For me, a very easy one to start, and I think the only person who I can probably say in there that is the exact reason why we come away with 3 points, and that is Thomas Kaminski.
It's quite funny though. We're talking about a 1-0 win against 9-man Sheffield United, and our probably man of the match, I think he ended up getting man of the match, was Kaminski. And it's like,
they were good saves. Like they
were
very
brilliant
clever.
saves. And to be fair, like that first 30 minutes, like you said, we could have been 2 or 3 down comfortably. Brilliant saves.
Do you know one of the ones as well I find one-on-one that's quite interesting is I feel with what we have previous, because I know there's some conversations around Mannion had a very good game in the Chelsea game, albeit one little moment.
Yeah.
But what I do find with Kaminski, and where I think one is his shot stopping, but secondly, he's got such a commanding figure and kind of a big. I think when players come up one-on-one against him, his positioning is brilliant, and he's very, very good at kind of trying to push them to shoot in the right direction that he then will go for the save.
What I think
the Cannon one especially I thought was exceptional keeping and quite underrated. It was, yes, you could argue in any world a striker should be finishing that, but I thought it was very, very good keeping.
Brilliant keeping. And you mentioned about shot stopping is one thing we've talked about, how effective he is, and he is essentially brought in for that, because we knew at the start of the season we were going to come up against teams that are going to dominate top parts of the game, and we're going to come up against quite a few shots. So we need a keeper in there that's going to be good at stopping the shots, and he is brilliant at it. Arguably one of the better ones in the league. But also
8th clean sheet of the season.
We've got a lot of clean sheets, and a lot of those are down to him. He's made some brilliant saves throughout the season, and weirdly as well, Kaminski's been the target of some pretty firm criticism at times. But then there's games like today where he's actually gone on to probably win us the game.
Is that though just the life of a keeper?
It is.
I think there's very few, unless
you get targets.
Yeah, unless you get to the elite top level. Realistically, most keepers, and I think some of the criticism can be warranted. Like distribution, for example, it's not his strong point. It's not great.
No.
And to be honest, his distribution lumps it up, and that's pretty much what we do.
I don't think you get many keepers that tick all the boxes. You kind of got to find a keeper that has the traits that you need for that time in your career, I guess.
Well, we've discussed it before. If they have all the traits, they're probably playing at a higher level.
Yeah, 100%. But also another thing I noticed he was very, very good at today was claiming sort of the crosses that came across the box. He had a few where were lashed across, and he managed to keep hold of the ball. And I think actually, again, that's just the sign of a very competent keeper, where they can sort of command their space, their box. He essentially kept us in that game for that barrage that we had in the first half. and ultimately that's what ended up giving us the springboard to go and win the game. So
100%, 100%.
brilliant.
Let's move on from there then, and we've got a new signing, and it was one that I was really, really impressed with at times. I thought it started the game probably a little bit shaky. I think it's a difficult game probably to try and get into, and it was a bit of a I don't know how to really describe it. It's a difficult game, I think, to go in where I don't think he's played a full 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And to be
Been thrown in a bit of the
chucked in at the deep end, but it would be Harry Clark. And I thought he showed some signs of, to be honest, especially down that right-hand side, some of the bits we've missed of what we wanted from Bree, and he just seems to have fallen off a cliff. But I thought he showed that, but with a much better presence than Bree. I find Bree quite lightweight sometimes. And I thought he just came across as quite...
showed willing, didn't he?
Yeah, willingness and sometimes just kind of pushed up and definitely had a bit more pace than a Bree. And I thought...
Good touch.
Definitely,
good on the ball.
Well, he pinged a few like outside of the foot cross-field passes
as well. I noticed that as well. Like
switching
the play. Yeah. And that's obviously going to be quite important because we're going to have times where we need to switch the ball. And I think, like you said as well, like a bit more powerful, a bit stronger, a bit more. He looks a bit more composed, I would say, especially in that sort of times where he gets the ball and he needs to run it up the line. You're right about Bree. Like Bree just sometimes just looks a bit lightweight, can get bullied.
Well, I think you've got to look at Bree. The whole time over he's been at Charlton, there was a time where you'd say he was undroppable, he was indispensable to the team. I don't think any of those conversations were ever around his overall 90-minute performances because of what he brought. Is he
set pieces,
he'd create something out of nothing, his crossing. What I thought with him was I actually thought, okay, actually that's someone who over a 90-minute game brings a vast improvement.
Yeah.
And arguably at the moment, especially, he can clearly... He is quite technical on the ball. He can get a cross in. He played a beautiful pass through to Lyndon Dykes on the right. That's so close. But it was kind of offering similar to what Bree does. But as I say, he had much more attacking intent. I felt he was more solid defensively. And if I'm looking over the rest of the season, what kind of a player I'd want, he seemed to tick a lot of the boxes.
Well, also, like you said, it's his first game and he's not really up to speed. So I'd like to think that he's going to get stronger and stronger. So it's a very good start to his career at Charlton, and I think actually he's got a lot of potential to really push on and actually give us more of a threat down that side, which I think is really important.
No, definitely. I'm very excited. And it looks like that is probably, realistically, the replacement for Aubrey, who my understanding is from today, I think, is his... I think it is his final game, and it's a wave goodbye. I'll take him to the station. But the final one, then I think we can look at as a positive. And I think for this, I think it was a very good performance, but just to have that instant impact, for the importance of what I feel from that, but also everything we've discussed over this player already today, and the final one would be Lyndon Dykes.
Yeah, I think he's worth a mention. Like he's already shown why he's been brought in, and he's played 45 minutes for us. He got the assist, obviously, for the goal. So again, you mentioned earlier, like the way he managed to sort of twist his neck, but flick it on with purpose. And this is stuff that we talked about week in, week out, that a lot of the time we've had players, especially Lieber, you could argue at times, has just been a bit aimless. This time we've got someone who's probably more aware of what's going on around him due to his experience, like his obviously championship experience. Great little flicked on header to the side, and then obviously putting it on a pretty much on a plate for Carey to just bang it in. And but not only that, he threw himself about. He made himself a nuisance.
Do you know what I also thought? And I thought sometimes we look at Lieburn, for example, and I think we still feel there's a lot of the game he has to learn. With Dykes at the age of 30, I just thought the runs he makes and the kind of position he's looking to get himself into, that kind of one we were talking about with Clark putting the ball in, just the fact he is running off that. And if you actually watch him off the ball, he was making some quite clever runs, pulling players out of position. I just think that experienced head, and I think he showed a lot in there, albeit, as I say, I hope there will be better performances to come and he'll have more of an impact. But I thought as a first 45 to show the kind of game that he'll bring, and also to show, I thought it was quite a show to Lieburn, for example, that there is a competition now for his role. Because realistically, I think there is most likely it's going to be a Lieburn or Dykes alongside probably Kelman is what the ideal is. Yeah, I thought it was a really, really good first performance. I thought if we're looking at have these new signings come in and do we think they're going to impact and have a positive effect on the team, I think 100%.
Well, he's also coming into a game and a team that were struggling today, and he still made an impact.
It's
So
quite a kind position to come into
it
against
is.
the 9 men.
It is, and I think the scenario of him coming on against 9 men, he would have been licking his lips, to be fair. But at the same point, like we didn't perform well today, and yet he still managed to make an impact. So if we're on it, he could be really dangerous.
I'm very excited to see what he brings to the team.
Yeah.
I think there's probably a couple of special mentions, and there are ones I want to go into detail. But I do think there was 2 other players that I thought sat kind of between, and I wouldn't say they were kind of the key performers of the game, but one would be Sonny Carey. He came on, and I think he obviously had the impact of the strike. I thought he looked a little bit off. There's a few times where he played some really quite squiffy passes. The final ball,
goal time,
game time. Yeah, I think he looked rusty. I would say Kane Ramsey also fell into that. I thought there's times where he looked really good, but he looked very rusty on his kind of pushing out with the ball.
Yeah.
Understandably so.
Glad to see him back in the team.
Yeah, I thought brilliant, and really exciting because I wasn't expecting it today.
No, I'm glad that he's back in.
Yeah, no, Ramsey would be one, and the final one would be TC. I do think there's no doubt he came on and impacted the game. I still had I thought the bit where I wouldn't put him in that top tier today. For me, I was disappointed. I think he had a lot of chance to get the ball in there.
He was sort of loitering on the edge of the box and then not really knowing where.
I think, and then when he got kind of found out as to what he was going to be doing, he had less impact. So he really had to take advantage of that first part. And yes, he was causing danger and damage, but I just felt, I still think that final product is a bit of an issue there. So they're definitely ones that I think had okay games, especially going into that second half. There's other ones that I think we can look at over in the positive, not positive, very negative. No, so I think the ones that I would look over in negative. The first one to start, because I think it's a quick one. Hopefully, it's just probably the last time we'll have to do it. A regular on the negative section of the show, James Bree. I think his head's gone. I really don't think he wants to be there anymore because I cannot see the same player who started those first 4 or 5 games, what he brought to the team. His passing was diabolical. His attacking was diabolical. His every just aspect of what he brought to that game. To me, that was I've given up game. And I'm quite surprised he started, to be honest, maybe out of necessity. But
I think it was just a numbers thing. I think he's been off his game for so long now. I think
he was terrible.
Yeah, he was bad.
He was. Oh my God!
I know he's been playing out of position technically, wasn't he? But it doesn't matter. Like, to be honest with you, like he's just playing the same position but on the other side. I know he's right-footed, but
yeah, but it doesn't stop a straightforward pass. It doesn't stop. He was
whingy. He was whinging as well.
Well, no, but that's where I say I get the feeling. I think his heart's gone of it. I think we probably all come to the conclusion that he's probably not going to come back.
Yeah.
I think his body language over the last few games tells me that. The things that were good about him, as I say, I think I've always seen it since day one, and I think we discussed this very early on. I really liked him in the early days, but I did say I think he's there for one reason. I think he is a bit of a passenger in the game until those key moments come up. When you're not producing those key moments and you're just the passenger, it's not good. And I'd rather not see him there. Wish him all the best in the future. Nothing particularly against him, but I'm so glad that I hope that's the last time I see him in a Charlton shirt, because over recent weeks has just increased my blood pressure twofold.
No, it wasn't his finest sort of swan song, I don't think. But yeah, like you said, wish him well. But I think he's given us all he can now, and I don't think we'll see him again.
Yeah. Someone who I found probably equally as frustrating here, and it just consolidated all of the thoughts. I know there was a few good performances a few games ago, which I don't think were around necessarily technical. It was just someone showing effort. I think it's highlighted he's not up for it this standard, and that's Croy Anderson. I thought a biggest fish out of water going, really. And I don't blame him. I really don't, because I just think he was so out of his depth, and I think he was playing the Coventry role. He didn't have the ability to track the players that were needed. I think he was very flustered at many times. I think the first chance of Bamford, what he was trying to do, getting up on the ball rather than just kind of getting up and booting it, tried to get on it, passing.
He was letting players run past him as well. Like you said about tracking, Coventry's very good at it, like sort of tracking his man and sort of pocketing him. Anderson at this level has not got that in his locker.
It was a highlighting, and it was just it was a showing of the fact that he's not this level of player, and I stand by. Look, I really like any youth academy product coming through, but you have to. And I think Jones, when we got promoted, I remember watching the kind of monthly show with Curbs on and things like that. And the one thing Curbs said was, when you get promoted, you can't have your players that you get too attached to.
Yeah.
When you realise the level is above them, you have to move on. You have to get better players in.
Yeah.
And with him, is there a player in the future? Maybe. I don't see it. I think he's mid-League One at best.
I think Curbs was essentially saying you've got to be quite ruthless,
Yeah.
and you can't have there's no place for sentimentality. And I think, like you said, we love to see an academy player come through if they're up to it, and especially at the level. And I think with Anderson, I think he gives his all, and that's what we like about him, is that he does fly into tackles. He is one that will give 110%, but at times against teams like Sheffield and other top teams, he's exposed. Like he's limited to what he can actually bring us. And I just think, like you said, he was just a fish out of water. And I think we actually, it was to detriment of us in terms of how well we could defend in that game, because he was just getting overrun multiple times.
I think that screams now. For me, it's probably another position. And I know, look, we can keep saying another position. I think centre mid's probably one. We're probably looking at left wing back and centre mid now as the two that desperately I'd like to see some addition in. But Corey Anderson, I think, needs to go on loan sleeve.
So I think I mentioned you that tweet I saw about someone had put out that it turns out that Anderson can only play a backwards pass. And then somebody had put underneath occasionally a sideways one. That's how it felt. It was like there was no real effort to really get the ball forward.
It was bad.
But then also defensively he was poor. So I think...
Well, as you said, I think the amount of times I saw a player, he just couldn't... And I think it felt like a player who felt even himself maybe he was being overrun. It was a bit overwhelming. It just... Everything about it was wrong.
Not, like you say, not his fault. It's just...
No, and I say nothing with like trying to be horrible or not on any of that, because it's not about not supporting your players. I love academy products, and as I say, I think, look, is there a player in there? Who knows? But I think for me, it just shows that even as a squad player, I just think he needs to.
Yeah.
He's not at it at the moment, and I don't even think as a squad player, maybe as a final 10 minutes, legs or something like that.
Yeah.
But starting lineup's an absolute no. Sorry, Croy. So let's move on to the final one. And I think probably the first time we've said this, but a player who I thought was really off it today as well was Kelman. And I know it's a game where limited kind of product of what you're giving him, but I thought the odd occasion he did, there was a lot of misplaced passes and like really simple ones where it could have been played out wide. And I think what we rely on, that whole game plan we were playing, relied on absorb, and you get like one chance. You get 1-2 chances in a half, and when you do get that counter, you have to take advantage. And I thought there was in that first half 2 or 3 occasions where Kelman was probably the breakdown of that attack to what I would describe as pretty lazy, obvious passes going adrift.
And the other thing with Kelman is we've said, like in the last couple, where since he's come back in, that actually he's looked pretty lively. He's looked pretty good, and I think
I think the best part of his game has been that build-up play, and it was just so off today.
I think sometimes players do just have a day where they're not on it, and I think that might be the case today, that he just had one of those games where nothing really clicked. Every pass was sort of slightly under hit. Like you said, we had a couple of chances where he could have played a nice free ball. We would have been pretty much in, and he just misjudged it. And I think on top of that, you didn't really see how he's very good at harrying and like sort of being that player that sort of puts the pressure on. And we didn't really see any of that today either. It was a bit of one of those where he just sort of... That's why ultimately he got subbed off.
Well, I think so, 100%. And I think it's a game to write off. He doesn't get the wrath of Brie.
No.
But
you can forgive it occasionally.
If you're going to praise him when he's good and you're going to praise him when he's positive, I do think he's one of those ones. And you do rely on certain players. And we've said it is, I think this is where I maybe describe it as the kind of sheep analogy, is that realistically, in a game like that, you do need players to kind of pull through. And there is moments where even in a poor performance, you can break through. And I think he was, as I say, part of that problem, which most of the time we've said, okay, it's the delivery in, it's the this, it was that, but there was times, as I say, where just it was, for me, some responsibility from that.
But I guess then the massive plus that we obviously last one to really mention is Godden coming in. I know it was right at the very end of the game, but that's a player that can rotate with Kelman now. So if Kelman's not on it, we've now got Godden now to come back in. He's a very similar player.
The thought of having now a rotation of Miles Lieburn and Lyndon Dykes and Charlie Kelman and Matty Godden, I love that.
Yeah,
and I love the thought of like...
They're like to like.
Yeah, realistically, like Godden coming on in like the 75th, 70th minute. I know at the first he's going to be a bit rusty, but that is really making...
And that's like the quality, that they're pretty much quality like for like on both. Like obviously having the sort of the type of player to just switch in and out is what Jones ultimately needs, because he needs to be able to rotate it in order to keep them fresh. So yeah, it's exciting now to have those options.
And I think it also, the one thing I'll thank Matty Godden for as well is it brought back my favourite chant, I think, of travelling years gone by of Godden again.
It was ringing out, to be fair, wasn't it? Even before he came.
It gets stuck in my head. And I think when it came up to the playoffs last year, I found myself just walking around work, just like humming it to myself. And seeing him back in, it's just straight back in my head. So, no, amazing to see that. And I think it is the final real positive to take of the day. That kind of competition squad depth is really starting to come back into play with a few additions. But yeah, I think that really sums up the game overall. And as I say, my biggest takeaway, it's a funny, odd game, but we have come away from Sheffield United at home, which we all thought probably going in was a very, very tough occasion.
Yep.
And we've come away with 3 points. That board is now a lot healthier. And I think of all the days, and we'll look at the table a bit later on, but those 3 points, when you look at the table at the end of the day as well, were so critical. Because if not for that, we would have been looking at, I think, a 2 point above relegation, and that pressure cooker just building up. So we've got our favourite one, the buffer. Back. So, brilliant. Well, let's move on to then. There's not much of a break, but for once, it's staying in London. We're not doing the double away trip and the lots of travelling, but a very interesting game coming up against Derby County.
Yeah, they're a team that's turned it around a little bit. For a while they were struggling, but I think they've started picking up a few results. I think they are another side that I think probably had them mid-table-ish this season, and that's whereabouts they are at the moment.
1-0 win against Preston.
Yeah, that's a great result for them. And I think they're a team also that have, again, some pretty quality players throughout the side. So again, then it's going to be a tough one. The midweek at home helps. I think that's always a difficult one when you're playing away from home on a midweek.
Well, also they've had to go Preston away. Yeah, coming down Charlton away, so we know the impact that's had on us in performances.
Yeah.
So I think that will have an impact on how the game goes. I feel like Derby are probably what we thought Watford would be at the beginning of the season in regards to, I think you can see many different sides of a Derby County side, and you don't really know which one's going to turn up.
Yeah.
I think it's a game that I would expect us to be looking at as a definite kind of one that we want to try and go for points. I still feel confident looking at it, and when you look at where they are, realistically 38 points, we're 32. They're the kind of team that I think in a home game, I'm going in with the expectation that we should be going for the win.
We should, 100%. And I think we are very solid at the Valley, and we have been throughout the whole season. I think I was watching the commentary earlier, and I think they said there's only 3 sides that have beaten us at the Valley this season. It was Middlesbrough, Southampton, I can't remember who the last one. Leicester. 3 decent sides. So ultimately, coming to the Valley is a tough gig, and especially, like I said, midweek, travelling, all that stuff. Let's just hope we can be a bit brighter than we were today, and we can sort of show. But then we've got some new players in there that obviously, arguably, it's difficult when they first come into the team. You might see Dykes get a start. Who knows?
At some point as well. After I don't think it's happened since we said it, but I think we were fully expecting by now we'd have seen what Coventry, Rankin, Costello, and Carey might look like, and we haven't.
It might be forced into
it. Maybe looking at it, you think.
I think Anderson's getting dropped.
Yeah, I think Anderson's got to come out, and I think it was only to cover Coventry anyway. Rankin, Costello has looked decent.
Snapped his leg.
So I think actually when we look at it, and I also think Carey can only be rested for so long, albeit he must be carrying something. But I'd love to say we've said it, and I think that when we look at what that could allow in regards to Rankin, Costello playing that kind of box-to-box role, Carey doing what we know Carey does best, and Coventry mopping it all up, I think we've potentially got there something that really could.
I think the other thing we might see is Campbell dropping back into that left wing-back role, and then Clark staying on the right wing-back side, because obviously Bree's not going to be there, so that could also happen. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because we'll see a bit more going forward, maybe on that left-hand side.
You've missed off another option. Rissalon. A wild Rissalon might turn up.
He wasn't in the squad again today, was he?
He's biding his time. He wants a Hollywood entrance. So
he's waiting for that.
Yeah, you never know. But I think with Derby, they're quite strong defensively. I think they're one of those teams that I think personally every game's quite close, and why they're quite up and down is I don't think they get turned over that often.
We drew with him at Pride Park, didn't we?
Yeah,
And I think it was a bit of one of those games where I think we were 1-up, and then we
had a good first half, and
they pegged us
pegged
back, and then they were dominating. We were unlucky.
I remember
they were unlucky. Sorry, not to win the game. I think Carlton Morris.
Yeah, and I think he's injured at the moment. I think Adjumang's their striker,
Okay.
who's I think started to hit a bit more form.
The American guy.
Yeah, very very big gangly. I didn't think I wasn't that impressed when we played against them from his performance. Obviously, Brereton, Diaz.
Blackett
From
Taylor's
memory, I think
coming
they
back.
had good centre backs. Yeah,
Blackett Taylor's.
yeah, Blackett
I
Taylor.
think he played in their last game.
Yeah.
I'm not sure league, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see him.
Brewster. So they've got a decent squad. I definitely want to say, I think it's much more down on the level of us having a game that we can actually get into more. I don't think they're the operators like a Sheffield United.
Not quite as much quality maybe in the middle.
Yeah, so I think it's a game that would be very interesting, and I think a very important one. I think for the fans, it would be an important one to be just a bit more competitive in, not to be playing that completely low block and kind of counter-attack football. It would be nice to see just a bit more expression in the team. But time will tell. I think it's an important game, so we then go into 2 away games, and I think we've got a great opportunity in that game. If we can do it and get those 3 points,
that we can bump up to 15th.
Yeah, 5th. I thought you were going to say.
Well, I wish 5th. No, I think 15th with the game without any games in hand. So, but like we have got a good opportunity to push on now. A home game. And coming off the back of a really good 3 points. So I know the performance wasn't there, but hopefully, like I say, we've had it loads of times where we haven't performed great, and then the next game's been really good. So.
And if it's a bad performance and we get all 3 points, I'll be sitting here smiling just as much. So
who cares?
Well, let's quickly then. We're pretty much now at the end. Let's move on to another quick look at that league table. I say looking a bit healthier than what it would have done had things gone bad. But yeah, sitting in 18th, we're 5 points above the drop. But I think I saw a video on this online the other day, and I think so much when you're in this bad run of form, you can say we're 4 points above the drop or 5 points above the drop, and you get very obsessed with that. I think the thing to be very important in that is with a winning game in hand, we're sitting in 14, or just in and around that, and then we're only 3 or 4 points off being completely mid-table at that point. So I think there's a way to say that you can look at it in that positive vein. And I think predominantly it's more the performances that have dropped us into that mindset.
You also have to look as well. There'll be teams down there like Blackburn, for example, and a few other Oxford. They're going to be scraping around for points week in, week out. So it's not as if Norwich look like they're probably going to bump themselves out eventually. They're playing much better now.
I think you've got to look at that. They were 7 points adrift. A lot of people would say they've been in very good form. They're still in the relegation zone.
Yeah.
I think you forget how 5 points, for example.
That's my point. Is
5 points could be 5-6 games time.
Well, Blackburn. Say Blackburn and Oxford just keep losing, then ultimately they're going to stay down there. So it's one of those. It's like every point we get is really important, but the buffer we keep mentioning is important because it gives us that little bit of time to just push ourselves back up the table. With that, anywhere where you can get the 3 points, it really does make a big difference. So,
well, it looks like at the moment Oxford are getting a bit cut adrift now. They're sitting 5 points in the relegation.
I think we're going to see Blackburn tail off and sit in that relegation zone. I think that might be the bottom 3: Blackburn, Oxford. And
I think personally it will sit Sheffield Wednesday, Oxford, Portsmouth or Blackburn. Is my gut feeling. But one of the ones you've got to be a little bit careful. I think they've got enough quality there. But West Brom has started really flying down towards it. We're now above them. They're a team that really surprised me.
They've got Norwich next as well.
Yeah. So it'll be very interesting. Well, there we are. So thank you very much for watching another episode. We'll be back recording Tuesday night after the game. So for the episode to be out Wednesday. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you on the next one.